We have with us today a special guest, April Rodriguez-Plott of the Defense Counterintelligence Security Agency. We commonly refer to that as DCSA. Now, April is a senior industrial security special agent with DCSA with over a decade of experience at DoD. Now, she holds a MA in organizational communication and also has certifications in security fundamentals, industrial security oversight, and I'm probably much more than that. She currently oversees 50 facilities, 50 cleared facilities in the Orange County area, of which we're one of them. She is our assigned industrial security special agent, and will now provide updates on essentially national level policy affecting cleared defense contractors like us.
Right.
Yep.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Good morning.
How's the sound?
It sounds great.
It sounds great.
Now, for audience members, what should they do if they have questions?
If there are questions, please put their questions into the chat, and we'll get that. We'll make time to get them answered.
And April, please take the time you need because this is a special topic, and so we might run for all the audience members. We might run a little bit over, but we would like you to stay on because it is an incredibly important topic for all of us.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is a policy update primarily. So I'm going to make it as applicable and as exciting as I can, because really the relevance here is for everybody who holds a security clearance and is performing on a DoD deliverable that requires access to classified. This is applicable to you. So it's, it's good to highlight and become aware of, what's going on. And there's been a lot of changes in the last year. So I have been with DCSA, as you heard, for over a decade, and I've been assigned to your facility for just a little over a year and a half. So I've encountered you through virtual engagements, and I actually look forward to meeting you on site next week. So I have the briefing. Are you all going to have it in presentation mode for me?
We can, I think our technical director, can we share the briefing for April?
Thank you.
Just give us a second, and then just let us know when you want us to change slides.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes, we're looking forward to meeting you face to face next week as well.
Yes.
It's nice to finally get some of that behind us and be able to meet and talk about important things.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have been out conducting security reviews since fiscal year 2021. So I'll talk a little bit about how we're prioritizing where we go. But it has been nice to get back into industry, interface with some of our newer facilities, newer reassignments, and really that connection that we can build when we're in person. It helps facilitate reporting. It helps you understand what functional services we have available to you. So when we're out there with industry, it makes a big difference in terms of that accessibility and communication. So we're glad that we get to kind of reestablish that, because during COVID we were doing some remote engagements where it's kind of like a spot check of facility protocol and posture, but there's nothing like being in person and assessing a security review in person and getting to meet the folks responsible.
And April, how did you get into this field?
So if anyone has, so I was a college recruit. I went to Cal State Los Angeles, and I actually have a bachelor's in anthropology and wanted to do museum curation. And what ended up happening is DSS. We are now DCSA because we've gone through an organizational restructure. DSS had a booth, and I left my resume. I was just kind of job seeking at the time, and they taught me everything I needed to know. I want to say, without having former military background or exposure to the industrial security base, that learning curve was pretty tough. But I will say the rule of thumb is we like to tell new industrial security reps, you start to really feel comfortable in the role and have you be able to wrap yourself around policy in a more comfortable manner after about 3 to 4 years. So we don't expect anyone to learn everything overnight. So in any case, that's how I encountered DSS. And, I really have enjoyed the organization and plan on staying aboard. There's lots of changes going on here. So, and we have a great recruiting process. We have a lot of internships going on at our regional office in San Diego. So I know you all do talent acquisition and provide that talent labor. And so I would just say, DSS does have some good interns that come out of our organization with just a variety of backgrounds and expertise. After they leave, they do these capstone projects, so they're become very marketable individuals. So we're proud of our internship program.
That's great. That's great.
Well, I think
So
we've
I
got
think
our
we're sharing.
slides
I
up.
think we're
Yeah.
sharing slides now. Is that right?
Yes, looks like it.
Okay.
Okay. So we are Defense Counterintelligence Security Agency, and we were formerly Defense Security Service. We can go over to the next slide. So today I'm going to talk about a couple high-level things. I'm going to give you an introduction to who DCSA is and what the National Industrial Security Program means to you. We'll go over a couple of DCSA updates. We'll talk about something that's new and important to industry, which is our security review rating method. We'll talk a little bit about updated reporting requirements. And lastly, we'll cover understanding the threat, counterintelligence awareness, and reporting trends. I'll give you some insight about what we're seeing in the Cypress field office in terms of reporting from cleared defense contractors, but also introduce you to a tool that can help you kind of assess within your own business operations where there might be an opportunity to report. So next slide. And if anyone needs me to slow down, just put it in the chat. I see them popping up. I'm highly caffeinated. So in terms of the DCSA mission, we actually house background investigations. So everybody probably remembers the OPM breach that occurred. OPM lost the background investigation mission after that, and it was realigned with DSS in 2019. So since then, we've been reintegrating that mission set into our organization. So background investigators are now DCSA employees and some contract staff. We also have a counterintelligence directorate and mission. Their function is essentially to be a service to industry and to collect reporting on behalf of the intelligence community. So really, when we say industry is the first line of defense, those subject matter experts, folks facilitating the acquisition cycle, you are all the first line of defense in identifying when there is any attempt to contact or inquire of information regarding what you do, whether it is through social media means or invitation to conferences. We see a variety of ways to attempt to make contact. And so our CI special agents provide security awareness briefings. And they also, they'll be on site with me next week at the security review because they do support security reviews to interface and liaison to let you know how they can be of service to you. And in addition to that, we vet facilities. So once a company gets a contract that requires access to classified information, it has to go through entity vetting. So there's a lot that goes on there, but essentially once a company reaches that determination where we can authorize that they may access classified information, they begin to process their personnel for that contract performance, whatever has been awarded to you. So we have quite a unique mission set. And lastly, I should mention we're a functional manager on behalf of the DoD for security education. So the Center for Development of Security Excellence, CDSE, you may have heard of. We provide a great deal of education and training regarding insider threat, derivative classification, really any policy requirement on behalf of DoD. We have a learning platform that you can access and enroll for training there. So that is essentially what we do in terms of the workforce at DCSA. Next slide. So we, in industrial security, that is where I particularly fall within the organization and in terms of oversight over cleared defense contractors. And in this capacity, we operate as the cognizant security office for DoD. So what that means is once a company enters into the Department of Defense security agreement in order to do classified work, they are entering into a couple of requirements to engage in security reviews. So we are that oversight entity for the National Industrial Security Program. In terms of what we do, we are responsible for inspecting and monitoring companies. We also accredit the information systems used for classified information processing affiliated with customer requirements. We were also recently tapped with the mission for CUI, controlled unclassified information oversight. That policy is under development, and what I will talk a little bit more about that later. So as we've grown, we've incorporated the background investigations, the Department of Defense central adjudication facility, the folks who makes those determinations on the background investigations now fall under our umbrella too. So our organization's mission set has become very robust and dynamic. So you can imagine we're undergoing a lot of change, but we are excited to grow and have some great strategic plans for the coming years. So on to the next slide. And thank you, Elizabeth. And I just wanted to touch on briefly the National Industrial Security Program. This policy document is going to be most familiar to your facility security officer, anyone who is supportive of the industrial security program there at your facility. But essentially, as a cleared employee, something to know is this is essentially the policy that governs the security program. So if you're ever wondering, why do I get so much security education annually on insider threat, annual awareness, it's basically a result of this policy requirement. And oftentimes when we have companies like yours where you are performing, you're accessing elsewhere and you're performing elsewhere, you may get double tapped on training. And so that is because whoever your customer is fulfilling their policy requirements. And of course, you as a cleared defense contractor have to satisfy your own training requirements and records management for verification for DCSA inspection purposes. So just one thing to note, this National Industrial Security Program is overseen by DCSA, and we have approximately 13,000 cleared defense contractor facilities in the National Industrial Security Program. And we've been hovering around that number for quite some time. So yeah, we're just always approximately at 13,000. So on to the next slide. Okay, so DCSA updates. So effective October 1 of last year, the Industrial Security Directorate, so that is the entity that conducts the oversight engagements like security reviews with cleared industry, implemented a new security review and rating model. This has been a big topic of discussion because obviously it impacts the rating and the posture that your programs are assessed at. Prior to 2017, we had this calculated matrix that DSS developed. There was essentially a standard score. Points were removed for any vulnerabilities identified, and we categorized acute vulnerabilities and anything that might be administrative in nature. And then there were these like extra credit categories. We called them enhancements. So this was our governing protocol up until about 2016, 2017. And we started to shift our prioritization and our focus to really, we started to shift how we do industrial security, to be frank. And what we started to see is, we actually were not looking, we were looking at, some might say it was like a checkbox mentality, but we understand in order to really protect critical information, DCSA had to do a better, DSS at the time, we really had to do a better job at understanding what you protect, what is the process of development, all of the steps through that life cycle of whatever service or deliverable that you might make on behalf of the DoD in order to really ensure that we are securing our nation's security, critical technology development and the assets that are going to the warfighter. So we took on a couple of different review models between 2017 and when everything shut down in 2020. So some of these new models were not very sustainable. You probably did not get a security review during this time because of the type of work that you do in terms of supporting your customers at your sites and providing that subject matter expertise in mission management. Where we focused a lot was prioritizing critical technology development and microelectronics. So during this time, we shifted quite a bit and we learned a lot through COVID and went back to policy to redefine how we measure and assess what is a satisfactory, commendable, and superior program. So in this case, it has resulted in a new security review method. I'll talk high level on that to just give you high level awareness of what that is in a couple of slides. We completed, everyone wants to know how many security reviews has DCSA done using this new model. We've done about 2,000 so far. I don't have the numbers for what we've done in Q1 of fiscal year 23, but I can provide that next week if anybody's interested. Let's see, we also have reporting requirements. This Security Executive Agent Directive 3 talks about reporting requirements. You may have heard of, you're probably very familiar with the term adverse reporting. And that might be anything that would qualify as an activity that would need to be reported that might demonstrate that a person, there is some either a trustworthiness issue or something that just is behavioral in nature that needs to be reported based on the criteria of what the item is. But in terms of adverse reporting, that's just a very small picture of, holistically what might happen across a person's life cycle. We've got a new world we're operating in with, foreign ownership and influence in cryptocurrency. We've also got, we've got more definitions on what we report in terms of emotional and psychological health for those who are covered individuals. That's the big key here. Covered individuals means if you hold a security clearance, you have to abide by these new protocols. What I like about it, it's much more defined in this policy about what qualifies, what life events qualify in these broad categories of adjudicative guidelines. And it actually facilitates who the FSO, your facility security officer, should report to. And so this particular requirement came out last year. Implementation for training this to the cleared staff population and having a process for reporting went into effect this last August. So anytime we issue policy or policy clarification where there's action for industry, we generally give a window of time for program implementation. So we are past that window, and we look during security reviews now to see how that program is currently being implemented, or that part of your program is being implemented. And briefly on controlled unclassified information, the big key here is we've got a great toolkit that can give you an SOP, like a roadmap to standard operating procedures for the CUI categories that you've already defined that may be resident on your non-federal systems. And for right now, DCSA is not taking any oversight action. They are developing that what that implementation plan will look like. So what they've done over the last year is gather policy requirements, centralized a place on our website, and provided tools to industry so that you can begin to posture yourself for any upcoming requirements, but currently you're not being evaluated. We just have discussions when we're on site about which categories of CUI you have, and where you are in terms of implementation, in implementation of maybe CMMC, depending on the type of data you have resident on your systems. And last but not least, system changes. As you can imagine, as an organization grows, we have system changes. We used to have JPass. Some folks are probably familiar with that. It recently changed to the Defense Information Security System. And it is now transitioning to another system called the National Background Investigative Services. This is really relevant for your security practitioners at your facility because this is where they take all actions relative to your security clearance. And what I can tell you is a lot of people want to know why. What I can tell you first and foremost is JPass, we didn't own it. It was sunsetting and we had to create an interim solution, and this was that interim solution that DCSA created. But there was national level congressionally mandated requirements to get the National Background Investigative Services System off the ground, because a lot of other DoD components that are processing folks for clearances, like your military components, they're all going to be in NBIS, and there's the level of functionality and sharing across those functional services is going to be more effective there. And some of the continuous evaluation tools for automation are well, that's the purpose of NBIS, is to heighten those automation tools and capabilities. So with that, though, that was a lot. And so those are the DCSA updates. Over to the next slide. In terms of the security review model, there are basically a couple of high-level things to note. One, we create a new artifact called the Classified Contract Deliverable Lifecycle. We, for short, call this a CCDL. It's essentially a chart, a workflow chart of inputs and outputs. Who are your critical suppliers? Who are your critical folks that work on the contract requiring access to classified? During a security review, we narrow it down generally to one active contract with a sufficient amount of people that gives us a good understanding of what a company is doing. And then we go through what are the steps of development affiliated with whatever your deliverable is. And we ask a couple of very structured questions to get to inputs, outputs, and identify where there might be opportunities, one for reporting and countermeasures that are security relevant in the life cycle that may not have been considered in the past. So we take this risk-based approach based off of this life cycle review, but also stick to our policy requirements in our charter of looking at how your security program is compliant with the National Industrial Security Program Operating Manual. And lastly, how do we get to the rating? The rating is essentially, we assess 4 areas: NISPOM implementation, management support, security awareness, and security community. There are definition cards on each of these. I won't go into what that means, but for anyone on the security team, if you have not seen the definition cards, please do let me know and I can send them to you. I definitely send them prior to any exit briefs I do so that we can have, an informed discussion when it comes time for an exit briefing. And on to the next slide. Okay, so high level, everyone wants to know, how do I get rated? Essentially, we first want to look at, is a company in general conformance? Is there minimal risk going on based off of what we identify in terms of vulnerabilities or findings? And then we also look at each category that I just mentioned: NISPOM implementation, senior management, security awareness, which is driven by interviews of cleared personnel and uncleared personnel in some cases. We try to get a mixed bag, but mostly cleared, so that we understand your security program and training better. And security community. Each of those categories gets a category rating of its own. The overall rating for the security review is essentially the lowest category rating. And so if you've got two satisfactories and 2 commendables, the overall rating is satisfactory. Anytime a company may be in non-conformance meaning there are some critical systemic vulnerabilities or serious security issues that could not be corrected on the spot or remedied within a reasonable amount of time because it places classified at risk, we go the path of non-conformance. And then there are lower level ratings which require government customer notification and coming back on site to reassess the security program and ensure that the high level concern vulnerabilities had been mitigated. And that essentially is the workflow process for the new security rating. On to the next slide. Okay, so we kind of talked about SEED 3 just a little bit, just briefly, just so you can see, because I think sometimes we think, what do I need to report? And, I need to report things like, wage garnishments in arrears, or things like, during COVID, one of the most common one that I heard of from FSOs when I was doing security reviews, a lot of DUIs occurred. If you're a covered individual, it's got to be reported. So those were, that was probably the most common thing that I heard, and in terms of self-reporting during the COVID period. And in terms of what is covered under SEED 3, well, it's really adjudicative guidelines, but here are a couple of examples. Unofficial foreign travel. This is a new one. This is a new one because it was a best practice in the past to report foreign travel. If you were access to certain programs, customers required it. It was a policy requirement, but on collateral activity, it was not. Now it is a requirement to report your foreign travel to your facility security officer. Marriage, cohabitation, foreign national roommate. The goal here of some of these categories where they seem like they've broadened is they all align with the 13 adjudicative guidelines, which have not changed. But what we're also trying to do on the background investigation side is, it does not serve national security well to only investigate every 5 years or every 10 years based off of your level of access, because we still have critical programs, at the secret level, and some critical manufacturing that even occurs at the confidential level. And so what we're doing is we're moving to what we call continuous evaluation. And as this reporting comes in under SEED 3, one of the things we had to do was define it better for industry and covered individuals, so that it could also be put into our systems, so that when there are enough changes for an individual that are self-reported, externally reported, it would then say, okay, we need to get an updated SF-86, which many of you have filled out in order to obtain a clearance, instead of waiting for these very static investigation periods where we may potentially be posing risk based off of our determination for access and eligibility to classified information and the scope of time since certain life events. So that's SEED 3 and some of the categories there. Next slide. This is the last slide, and it's a busy slide, but it's a valuable tool. So let me just tell you how it works. In terms of understanding the threat and reporting obligations, industry are the eyes and ears for the intelligence community. The defense industrial base is targeted every day through many different avenues of contact. What this we call it the method of contact, method of operations, MICMO for short, does is it breaks down across the horizontal axis. What are the methods of contact that we see reported? And they've been grouped here. So some of them are cyber operations. Some of them might be resumes, academic. Others might be resumes, professional. And then across the horizontal axis, what you'll see is the type of contact, what the operation might be trying to achieve, and what it does, what we actually find that it does achieve through CI analysis. So we ask you all to start to look at this trend analysis and kind of see what are other contractors reporting, or actually looking at it from the view of, do we get a request for information? Who actually fields that mailbox? Do we get anomalous RFQs? And might they be with foreign entities that we don't normally do business with? And if so, are we forwarding them over to our FSOs in order to get reported to DCSA? Why is that important? It's important because it feeds the intelligence cycle. So what happens after you send in a suspicious contact report, and let's just use a request for quote or a resume submission, for example, that comes from an IP, a foreign IP address. We have CI analysts that are gathering that information, because what it does is it creates a picture where we might see, okay, this might be, yes, just someone looking for a job, but we might also see, hey, this IP address is connected to these other reports, and they're inquiring at these type of defense, clear defense contractor facilities. Or maybe they're specifically inquiring on certain programs. So this analysis gets done. And once there's a validated or substantiating report, then it gets sent to a member of the counterintelligence community. So in the IC community, our CI folks know what FBI wants, what NCIS wants. And so they're constantly rolling up these reports and sending them out. Once we send them out, entities may take them for action. Once they take them for action, we don't always know the end result, because if they open an investigation based off of CI policy, once an investigation is open, we are no longer talking about it on open channels. But the real takeaway here is that you all are the first line of defense. So the important part is to know where might I be targeted now that I know what these method of contacts are, and am I sharing this with my FSO? And this all connects back to rating, because also what happens is that last category I talked about, which is security community, we kind of roll up a couple things there, but one of them is reporting. So we're looking at how healthy is the posture of reporting based off of the size of the company, what the company does, how many cleared personnel. And we also do, open source research. So if we've got a lot of contact us here or a large social media footprint, none of these things are bad. They're necessary to operate in the business world today. But what we're looking for is what is our mechanism for identifying what should be reported to DCSA. So that is a new tool that we have. What I'll have next week during the security review is you have a couple of values here. These are reports that have come in externally across the agency from other cleared defense contractors. There is another column next to it for the specific facility that we're visiting. I did not have any CI analysts that were able to pull up this report specifically with your facilities reporting numbers today, but I will have it next week. And we can do this for facility level reporting. We can do this for the technology sector that you're in within the industrial base. So definitely, this is a tool. Our CI counterintelligence special agents can come out and brief it and their findings and really help you identify areas where you might be able to heighten your reporting posture. And next slide. So I'll go over this just briefly. What we're seeing in the Cypress field office, currently targeted sectors, software development, microelectronics manufacturers, PCB manufacturers, weapon systems, space and satellite. Currently in the Cypress field office, some of the suspicious contact reports, we call them SCRs, that we're getting from industry are resultant of solicitation offerings, financial compensation via LinkedIn and personal worker emails. Also inquiries through company websites. So there have been some fraudulent work orders within the NISP, within the defense industrial base, and some ransomware that we know that has occurred due to very sophisticated spear phishing. And in addition to that, request for product information. So a lot of times we get these, you might get these product information. You all have the talent that you provide. But if you ever serve in that role based off of who you're supporting, that would be of value to your FSO and potentially to the customer that you're supporting. Oftentimes I will get inquiries from companies saying, we don't normally do business with them, or this is an unusual volume of this particular, this particular product. We're not sure what to do with it. And it's great because then we can collaborate, we could talk to CI, and we can just let them know, do we have any derogatory information for them to consider while making their business decisions. And cyber intrusion, so cyber intrusion attacks, those are definitely things that we have seen in the Cypress field office that have been reported by cleared industry. Next slide. So here's my contact information. We have 2 CI special agents that can service you in your request, Brittany Hudak, James Castanon, and then here is the wider LA FBI reporting general email box as well. I know I went over a little bit, but over to you.
No, that was incredibly informative. Thank you so much, April. We have a couple questions I want to make sure we get to. The first one is from Peter asking about whether or not does DCSA also have a level of cognizance over the clearances in the IC community?
And DOE.
And DOE as well. Yeah.
So we do have reciprocity of facility clearances. So if a company already has a facility clearance and then gets an award for DOE, there is a process for reciprocity there, so you don't undergo that same process you went through us, and vice versa. In terms of clearances, DOE still has their own system and categorization of access and eligibility. So, but in terms of facility eligibility, which can be a big hurdle, we do per policy share reciprocity.
Great. Another question is, should a cleared person report a phishing email that goes to their personal email address or their SMA work email address? And who should they report it to?
And so SMA work email, yes. I would say with the personal email, if you think that it is targeted towards towards your work role, and based off of the content of the email, forward it to your FSO. It's never a bad idea to get a baseline from a company about what folks are seeing, because our CI special agents can let you know this has intelligence value or it does not. So my rule of thumb with all of my companies, and I know my CI folks are okay with me saying it, let's establish a healthy baseline. Let us see what you have to report, and then we'll let you know what, that one's not of value, so you don't have,
Okay.
you can kind of take that off your radar.
So you can imagine, I suppose also with many of the other cleared facilities that you have cognizance over, there's just a huge amount of phishing emails and just, that sort of thing happening these days.
Absolutely. Yes, there's a huge amount of phishing. And so what we do start to do, and the CI special agents get a little bit more specific with you about what they're seeing, what's of CI value, but we start with just what's going on at the facility. And if you're seeing spear phishing, where is it coming from? Because they have some good information on the IP addresses that they're coming from. And so that's definitely something that they can help you out with.
There's another question. Is there a way for us to determine if the IP address is from outside the US?
Yes. So what I can do is I will forward an email about how to expand the header so that you can see the information. Once you verify where that IP address, it'll let you know that it'll let you know where the IP originates. And then you can expand that header, PDF it, and send that as an attachment to your FSO, so that when they send it to DCSA, we have all the information and they're not going back and asking for it. But there's like a rule set we can send to you.
Fantastic. Did we miss any questions in the chat window? I think there was a question from Holly about fake RFQs, but I think that was answered, Purple 94. Any other questions that we may have missed? I'm asking our technical director to scan through those. Do you folks we've already talked about that one. I think we're good. All right. Hey, thank you so much, April. We look forward to seeing you next week. It'll be great to meet you in person.
Thanks. If I can find one of those gingerbread inflatables, I'm bringing it to our Christmas party this Friday. So thanks for the good idea, and have a good day, everybody. It was great to chat with you all. You all take care and happy holidays.
You as well. Happy holidays
to
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so for those of you who attended this week's town hall, you will receive a Todd certificate for this security briefing.